stupid pupil. I hear you've become one of the military's dogs.
Crown of Swords is the 7th book in the Wheel of Time. The Crown of Swords, I really enjoyed the Crown of Swords. I kind of really enjoy how this phase of the story is taking things slowly. It's not a slow book, but the overall series progression is slow, but it still progresses towards something. And what I love about these recent books is it allows the characters to just breathe and be themselves. This picks off right where Lord of Chaos leaves off, like literally right where it leaves off, after the amazing battle of Demise Well. So this is such an important moment in the story, and it affects a lot of stuff. For example, just even Rand being absent for a large portion of time has shifted some of the political dynamics that are going on in Kehin especially, and we're seeing him having to pick up the pieces after that. Rand, this is more of the same of what we got before, but just more. So we're seeing Rand as the most important political figure, seeing him develop his powers, balance him and his amnesty and running all these different countries, and obviously his internal conflict with Luce Theron. We're seeing both the One Power and politics contribute to his madness, which is really cool. So like the Lord of Chaos, this is Rand just juggling all these different things that he has under his belt, from trying to provide a ruler for Andor, trying to solve some issues going on in Kehin, maintain this leash he has on the rebel Aes Sedai who've recently sworn fealty to him, and we're seeing some conflicts there with other parties involved. For the most part, the beginning of this book was mostly told in Perrin's perspective. So I really enjoyed reading Rand through other characters' perspectives. However, this comes with some issues. So, for example, Perrin, he has a lot of POVs in this, which is great to see, but his story is mostly there to view Rand from another's perspective. It's mostly what it serves, so we don't get much character work with Perrin here, unfortunately, although he's still a presence in the book. However, by far the highlight of this book is the Ebudar storyline, which has an amazing cast of characters, by the way. We've got Nynaeve, Elaine, Avienda, Burgett, Tom, Julian, and of course Matt Cawthon. And this is great to see. I really enjoyed the Ebudar storyline. I really love the setting of Ebudar. And one thing that kind of shocked me, A Crown of Swords, essentially, it's Matt Cawthon's book. This is Matt Cawthon's book. And obviously we get all these other characters over here, but it's mostly focused on Matt Cawthon. And you know what? For a character that I had this opinion on in the first 2 books, let me just talk about Matt Cawthon, who is just the biggest dunce in this book. You know, Matt, you're not just a clown, you're the entire circus. Matt I hated in this book. He could die, I don't care. Matt was just a dunce in this book. Why is he here? Just why? This man Matt Cawthon pisses me off, honestly. Why is he even here? Yeah, that guy. The guy who I hated more than anyone else in the book. He's one of my favourite characters now. Who would have guessed? I like Matt Cawthon. I'm sorry, Matt Cawthon fans, if you were annoyed at me in my first 2 reviews, I did not revoke it. He was annoying in those first 2 books. I stand by it. Yes, I like Matt Cawthon. I like Matt Cawthon now. He's pretty cool. What I loved about Matt Cawthon is the dynamics. Because he's such a wild personality, such an unlikable personality. He has such amazing interactions with Nynaeve, Elaine, and Avienda. He wants to protect them. They don't really want him there. It creates some funny moments that I really enjoyed. Overall, I really love his interactions with these other characters. I especially liked his interactions with Burgett. Burgett kind of fits into this group better than she ever has before. I enjoyed a lot of her moments over here. She was great in this book. Matt and his relationship with the Red Hand and that young boy Oliver, who he has kind of adopted, is great to see. It creates some it gives Matt Cawthon a bit of a heart, but beyond the womanizing shit talker that he is, there's a heart in him. And what this Ebudar storyline is, it's kind of it's a treasure hunt story, right? I was surprised to see that it's mostly just focused on character work. It's mostly just focused on character dynamics, character interacting, and Matt Cawthon growing as a person. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed this book, mostly because Matt Cawthon's development in this is great. My major complaint in this book, however, is that the last 30 pages goes back to that Wheel of Time formula of having the same kind of climaxes. But the climax for Crown of Swords, it happens in like the span of 30 pages. It was just so quick, didn't have a natural build up. I mean, and it just, the prose felt weird. The writing felt weird for this climax. I don't know if I'm the only one, but it was just written weirdly. And it kind of went out, this book kind of went out in a whimper, if I'm being honest, which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed a lot of this book. But the ending kind of left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Otherwise, A Crown of Swords is, once again, an entry I really love. Alright, let's get into the spoilers now. So this picks off right where Dumail's Wells end. So the rebel Aes Sedai have sworn fealty to Rand, and he goes back to Caer Hien. Obviously, Rand's been missing for a while, so some of the nobles there have taken it upon themselves to issue, I think her name is Kulavir, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, self-proclaimed as the new ruler of Caer Hien. This is illegal, bad, and Rand makes this decision to kind of send her away, to kind of exile her as punishment for this, because this is something she should not have done and she cannot do. And what I loved about this moment, it's Rand having to make these tough decisions that really taint his soul a bit. And we're seeing this slow breaking of the innocent youth that he used to be, and him having to be this ruthless dragon reborn, right? Just simple stuff like Rand going missing for a couple of weeks completely shifts the political sphere and how that affects everything. And I love just the attention to detail Jordan puts in that. The Wise Ones are currently looking after or have control over the rebel Aes Sedai, and this creates some tension with some of the other characters. And the rebel Aes Sedai, they have sworn to him with words, but their spirit hasn't really shown it yet, which really grinds his bones. And we've seen a rift between him and Perrin. There's a complaint I have. We see Perrin leave Caer Hien to go off on his own to go off on his own storyline, which is set up in the next book. What it essentially is that they don't even show us this rift that happened between them two. There was like a little bit of a scuffle between them two, and it was just shown in flashbacks. I would have rather have just actually seen this as a chapter. I'm not really sure why Jordan did this. I would have just actually liked to see it. That would have been a really cool storyline in this book. It's just kind of glossed over, which, especially because Perrin doesn't have much to do in this book. What I loved about Rand in this book, like, as his physical and political power grows, the more arrogant he becomes. So Rand's becoming really arrogant. Like, he's becoming big-headed. He thinks he's the king of the world, and we see this so clearly with that chapter with the Sea Folk, where his Taraveran energy is making them, tell the truth, and we see him have such a great control over the situation. And like the ego gets to him, and he's like, you know what? I'ma go and I'ma sort out those noble houses outside of Caer Hien that are opposing me right now. And that's when he meets the Caroline Damodred and whatnot. And then we see events unfold within itself. We're seeing freaking Padan Fain coming out of nowhere, just stabbing him. And we also I forgot to mention, we got introduced to that new Aes Sedai, Kaduswan. I have mixed opinions about this. It's an interesting character. It's kind of a cool foil for Cerelia, who are supposed to be these two much older, much more experienced women who have a lot of influence with the other Wise Ones and the other Aes Sedai. However, I don't know if it's too late to introduce a character who's supposed to be a new big player. For me, I always like it when the big players are introduced earlier on, and then we're getting smaller players introduced later. To have another major character being introduced quite late into the series, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but for the most part, it's okay. It's fine. For me, I don't think the pacing was as good as Lord of Chaos, specifically from Rand's storyline, because from Rand's storyline and Lord of Chaos, it was a natural progression. Here, it's a lot of jumping. So it's like he's here in Caer Hien with Min. We're getting some of the romances there. It's a fine romance. Doesn't interest me that much. It's not as good as Avienda and Rand, in my opinion. And then we're seeing him talk with the Sea Folk, and then from there he goes to the noble houses outside of Caer Hien, gets stabbed by Padan Fain, he's injured, he gets healed. Then the last 30 pages, he just goes through a portal. We're finally getting the Battle of Ilyan. We're seeing Bashir over there. He has an army outside of Ilyan. this is this invasion of Ilion has been talked about since book 5. So I was like, okay, we're finally seeing it, even though it's kind of just happened randomly. That Rand's like, okay, I've been healed now. Let me just go to Ilion, and then he fights Samael. And this is where my issues comes in. All of these things are so jumpy. It's just one after another after another. There is build up there in the previous books, but I don't feel that natural progression there. And his actual battle with Samael was so dull. It was so dull. Like, there wasn't even any exchanging of dialogue between the two. It was them jumping locations, and then when you get to Shal Ghul, and then we seen him and that one Aiel maiden who he had to leave behind in the previous book, and she returns, and then Samael is torturing her, and then Rand makes this decision to end her suffering with balefire, so it never existed. These are all individually great moments, but it feels so jumpy and not connected at all. Them Rand and Samael are fighting each other, and then some random guy comes and helps Rand, and then he pisses off, and I'm like, all of these things, it's so jumpy. There's all these different things happening. It doesn't feel natural. In a fight, it's like there's sometimes into an exchange of dialogue. We're seeing them throw hands at each other, but in here, it's like them jumping locations and all this stuff happening. It's felt so all over the place. And then Samael, and then all the dark forces of Shal Ghul is enveloping Samael, and it was it just felt not coherent at all. This last 30 pages, the fight, I did not enjoy reading. What I love about Jordan's fight is that his prose is so great when it comes to the environmental factors here. We're getting such great descriptions of just the environment, of like how the one power affects the environment around them and stuff. And that was kind of missing in here. Just the final battle with Samael was kind of a whimper. It was kind of a whimper in my opinion. I didn't enjoy it. However, this is saved by the fact that Matt Cawthon's storyline, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Rand as a character. It's mostly just the pacing of his storyline and just the sequencing of it as well that I didn't enjoy. But Matt, I really enjoyed Matt's storyline here. This is Matt Cawthon's book, and I really enjoyed his story here. His interactions with the other characters are great. I love seeing this newfound friendship between Burgett, and reintroducing characters we've seen before, like that one dark friend who threatened Rand and Matt in the Eye of the World. She made a return. We're getting some moments with Queen Tylin, who is the Queen of Ebudar, right? And they're all she's accommodating all of our characters in this storyline. And Queen Tylin has single-handedly introduced something that's awakened a new obsession in me. Yes. I kind of want to read more books about fantasy myths now, because Queen Tylin has awoken something in me that I'm not proud to say. And Matt's weird, kind of creepy, slightly weirdly sexual relationship with Queen Tylin was kind of hilarious. I enjoyed reading that. Sumi, it was funny. I enjoyed it. And it is kind of, what it essentially does, it gives Matt Cawthon a taste of his own medicine. He's always the womanizer going after women. Now we're seeing someone chase after him, and he's like, oh damn, so this is what it feels like. Huh, that kind of sucks. So once again, and it kind of serves Matt's character in a way, because he grows a lot in this book. Once again, I loved his interaction with the other characters, because they're so reluctant to work with him for the longest time. Nynaeve and Elaine are trying to strike this deal with the Sea Folk. They need the help to find the Bowl of Winds, and they're so reluctant to work with Matt because he's such a wild personality. And then once they do get his help, it's just a lot of funny banter between the two of them, especially Nynaeve and Matt. I also really liked this new friendship between Matt and Elaine, which was great to see. I really enjoyed that. With Nynaeve and Elaine, we're seeing them being introduced to a new society, which is the kinswomen, I think. And this answers the question of, where do novices and accepted who are runaways go to? And we finally find that out, and they become kinswomen who are situated in Ebudar and some other places around the world. So Nynaeve and Elaine run into them when trying to find information about the Bowl of Winds. We're getting a lot of world building, and when it comes to these kinswomen, and we're getting a lot of questions answered with this. And we're getting there's this huge revelation that the kinsfolk or the kinswomen are like hundreds and hundreds of years old. That's all fine. However, what I really enjoyed about Nynaeve and Elaine's storyline here is seeing the rebel Aes Sedai, even the White Tower Aes Sedai who are in Ebu Dar, and even the kinswomen who are women who are not rejected, who ran away from the Aes Sedai. They are not Aes Sedai. Everyone is not giving them the respect that they deserve because they are now newly proclaimed Aes Sedai because of Gwen. And we're seeing them get none of the respect. They're seeing nobody acknowledge them as Aes Sedai. We're seeing this internal conflict within them, seeing them prove themselves as Aes Sedai and prove the others that they are Aes Sedai, and not only Aes Sedai but they are above them in the power. That was great to see. That's what I really enjoyed about Nynaeve and Elaine in this book. And once the Ebu Dar storyline comes to a head, it's awesome. So we're seeing like dark friends like Black Arja intercept them when they're finding the Ball of the Winds. And this, I'm more forgiving of the battle in between Rand and Samael because for me the real climax was reclaiming the Bowl of the Winds and the fight between the Black Arja and the Dark Friend, which was awesome. Matt has this awesome fight with a golem. I think that's how you pronounce it, the golem. And what this is a person who once the bond power doesn't affect at all, side to side, and can't touch this thing. It has like no bones. It's like moving around like a jelly man or something. And then we see like once again the freaking medallion. It's like super powerful because the one thing that does affect this golem is the medallion. We're seeing this awesome fight between Matt and the golem. Once again, Matt, I really enjoyed Matt in this book. I think he has some amazing development. You know, all this different stuff, all these different relationships within the storyline. It just serves him kind of humbling himself, growing as a person, especially his relationship with the young boy Oliver. When the other characters, Nynaeve, Elaine, Avienda, leave with the ball, Rand stays here because he has to look for Oliver, who's gone missing, and then Sinchan invasion happens. And this didn't feel random because in Morgase's perspective, she's here with the white clothes, and we've seen the Sinchan invading Altara, right? For me, it made sense. It was like, oh yeah, so the Sinchan invaded Amadisia, so that means they are here in Altara, so they're going to come for Ebu Dar. That felt natural. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And finally, we're seeing Morgase's storyline move forward. She has escaped Altara. She's with her crew. And in terms of the other characters, Elaine, we get a small amount here, some pretty good stuff. I just really liked her interacting with Sheriam, Shuan, all the other Aes Sedai. I love the fact that she is a puppet. She's essentially a puppet for the other Aes Sedai scapegoat, and she realized this and she wants to break this. We're seeing her become accustomed to the role of an Amren, you know, being someone who's a Machiavellian, who's politicking and plotting and doing all these maneuverings right here. And we're seeing her become a much bigger player, and we're seeing her become ruthless as well, with her making these two accepted who are trying to blackmail her, right? And then she forces them to swear fealty and whatnot, and she's forcing multiple characters to swear complete fealty to her, which is great to see. We're seeing a Gwen, kind of like Rand, becoming a really important political figure and becoming ruthless as well, while trying to adapt to the role. So the Crown of Swords is essentially just focusing on the key players right now. We get some interlude stuff with all the other Forsaken and whatnot. We're getting some stuff with Moghedien and that freaking Midral guy, what was it, Shadar Haran or something, I forgot the dude's name. I just really enjoy this phase of the series. It's taking things slow. We're just seeing characters breathe, be themselves, develop. All this internal introspective conflict that's going on, all the political maneuverings. I just really enjoy this. I really enjoy this phase of the story right now. I enjoy the Crown of Swords. It's more of what we got in the previous book. Where this kind of falls off on a little bit is that it kind of reverts back to the Wheel of Time formula of, you know, the traditional Forsaken in battle. But I still really enjoyed A Crown of Swords. I really enjoyed this book, mostly because Matt Coulson, I really enjoyed in this book. I think he has some great development here. Rand gets some great development. Nynaeve, Elaine. I kind of like all the Emmonsfielders now. Like the main 5 characters. I like all of them now. And that's pretty great to see, because for the longest time, I didn't like all of them. And even the side characters I love here. So, once again, A Crown of Swords is a great entry. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Not quite. I feel like I would have given this an 8.5 if the battle with Samael was just a little bit better. It felt a bit more natural or more organic. Otherwise, This is a solid entry. I really enjoyed The Crown of Swords. You guys, tell me what you thought in the comment below. If you have read The Wheel of Time, please use spoiler-free comments because I and a lot of other people are going through this series for the first time. Anyway, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you in the next video.